as recognized in UN Security Council Resolution 2457. Second, the African Union reaffirms its zero tolerance position when it comes to the issue of sexual violence in conflict. One of the most outrageous challenges we face remains the lack of criminal accountability. Survivors hold little chance to see their offenders face justice. At the continental level, the African Union reaffirmed in its policy on prevention and response to sexual exploitation and abuse for peace support operations in 2018 its full commitment to eradicating sexual and gender-based violence in Africa. The AU has focused on operationalizing its various instruments on sexual and gender-based violence and sexual exploitation and abuse through the work of the Office of the AU Special Envoy and the Department of Peace and Security, as well as the Department for Women, Gender, and Development. At the level of the AU member states, acts of violence against women, such as rape, domestic violence, and others, have been criminalized in several countries. In addition to the legal and policy approach to prevention, African member states have also undertaken to build a culture of peace and nonviolence. I wish to recall that African heads of state and government have declared the 2010-2020 is the African Decade of the Woman. In this context, training centers and programs have been developed to raise awareness against sexual and gender-based violence and to provide the necessary knowledge as well as to prevent those deployed in peace support missions for committing sexual exploitation and abuse. Third, we must adopt an approach that is survivor-centered and community-led when developing and implementing programs and policies that address their needs. Their strength as survivors, as shared by some of the briefers today, is inspiring, and we must learn from them. The African Union offers robust support to survivors in partnership with African civil society organizations and women-led organizations to provide health services, physical and psychological support, as well as legal and economic aid. The Maputo Protocol, in Article 14, guarantees the respect and promotion of women's rights to health, including sexual and reproductive health. We do, however, recognize that we need to continue to enhance support for survivors, including medical support, psychosocial support, and support for rehabilitation. And lastly, Mr. President, but not the least, the AU recognizes that gender-sensitive transitional justice should be an integral part of peace-building and post-conflict reconstruction processes. A transitional justice that takes into account women's and vulnerable communities' experiences of violence. A transitional justice that fully addresses the role and responsibility of perpetrators of conflict-related sexual violence. A transitional justice that addresses overcoming stigmatization while focusing on reintegration. It is our responsibility to make this happen. I thank you.
I thank Her Excellency Ms. Fatima Kiari Mohamed, Permanent Observer of the African Union to the United Nations, for her statement. And I now give the floor to the representative of Vietnam.
Mr. President, Vietnam would like to thank the German presidency for convening this very important debate and express our appreciation to the Secretary General for his valuable report and to the briefers for their in-depth remarks. Mr. President, thus we have gone a long way in combating sexual violence in conflict. The use of sexual violence as a tactic of war and terrorism continues on a larger scale. When the victims suffer from severe pains, social exclusion deepens their scar. Children born of wartime rape never understand why they are discriminated on the ground existed even before they came into life. At the same time, most of the perpetrators have not been held accountable for the crimes they committed. The vicious circles of violence, exclusions, and re-victimization is therefore unbreakable, undermining our peacekeeping and peace-building efforts.